For this. First, we got questions for Fanny.
Yes, I'm very sorry because I disappear. And I think I'm like facing few issues with my screen. So I'm very sorry, but I'm here and I will do, I'm happy just to participate to the question and other stuff.
Okay, so the first question is, how do you explain light pollution when there are cultural barriers?
Yes.
Sorry, the cultural barriers.
Well, there are plenty of topic just to related to this, I guess. But if I can mention like two specific one, it could be like the cultural conditioning we have. If I take the example, for example, of like the Vietnamese context, so Vietnam gets like a long war, then they have like a lot of time, like they were like suffering from starvation and all that stuff. And the construction market opened like not like maybe like one decade ago. So they have like experimenting like a kind of euphoria. And in this kind of context, it's very difficult just to come and to say like, oh, can you be like a bit more sober with like the way you're using like a technology, like lighting and all that stuff? It's definitely conflicting with like the way, for example, they are living like their experience inside their country. No, they want to show off, they want to enjoy, to want to see things. They are considering like the light, it's something modern, high tech and all that stuff. And this is, I think, part of like the cultural barrier, because in my own country, in France, maybe that was the case like few years, maybe like 30 years ago. And now we have overgo like a different trend and a different perception of the light and different relationship. But that's not the case in Vietnam. And that's like the cultural conditioning, I guess, like all the symbolic we can put behind like the lighting. And then something like a bit different also, it's when we are doing like a project. So we have like a lot of coordination to do between consultants and between like the different stakeholders of the project. And sometimes, and I include myself, we just like people are saying like, this is your service, your scope of service, you need to do that, and just to comply with this different like documentation. So you do your job, but you're not like asking too much to the other people, like, oh, what do you think about this or something like that. And maybe someone will change, like the architect will change like a surface that will impact like your lighting effect, but you will not coordinate that much because maybe it's not completely written inside your contract. And by the end, when in terms of results, well, we're missing sometimes like very important, like key important parts inside the design. And this is how we can create like bad practice and bad result by the end. So I think like, yeah, there is like all the social perspective, and we can't like ask like all the countries, and specifically like the countries under development, just to be at the same level that country who already develop like all their market and have like their construction market with like a high maturity, which is not the case here. We can't request them like to have exactly like the same perception and requirement from the beginning. And then also like the coordination between consultants, between people who are building projects, just to get something consistent, but also just to be like fully engaged and just to re-question sometimes our expertise and to break a bit our habits. It's a very difficult, but if we don't do that, many like efforts we are doing are a bit like counterproductive.
Thank you, Fanny. So the next question will be for Cesar. So is Australia and New Zealand's light pollution growth the same as the rest of the world? Or you are muted?
Thanks for that. Sorry, I can't speak for New Zealand, and I want to caveat with my answer by saying I don't actively participate in measuring light pollution in Australia and New Zealand, but from what I've read in the literature, Australia in the past has had a slightly lower growth of light pollution than the rest of the world. That 2% per year number that I referenced I believe in that same paper or in a subsequent paper, Australia's light pollution growth was closer to 1% per year or 1.5% per year. But I don't know about New Zealand, I'm afraid.
Thank you. And another question for you. So you mentioned 6 guidelines. What are they and how do they align with Dark Sky International's 5 principles?
That's an excellent question. Yeah, so they the first thing I would say is they were intended to be compatible with the dark sky principles. So they're starting with natural darkness and only adding light for a specific purpose, using adaptive lighting controls to manage timing, intensity, and color of light. Light only the intended area, use low intensity lights to keep lights close to the ground, although that's a bit more of a controversial add-on. And the next one, the 5th one, use non-reflective or dark-colored surfaces near light fixtures. That's also one of our principles. That one's a bit more challenging because from lighting engineers, they don't always like that. They need reflective surfaces so they don't have to add other lights. So we're still in the process of thinking that particular principle. And then the last principle is avoiding white lights, and we also recommend using either amber or low color temperature lighting with little or no blue light where possible. Even though, using little blue, very little blue wavelength light tends to be more beneficial for a lot of wildlife, it may not be. So yes, again, just caveating that one. But yeah, intended fully to be compatible with dark sky, with the dark sky principles.
Okay. So the next question would be for Xinrong. So do you do field trips to dark sky places near Wuxi so the children can see what real dark skies looks like, or have older guest speakers talk about how it once was dark when they were young? So I'll do the translation. 你是否会带学生到无锡附近的黑暗的地区进行实地考察，以便学生们能够看到真正的黑暗天空是什么样子的？或者是否邀请过年长的嘉宾讨论他们年轻的时候的夜晚是有多么的黑暗？
Yes. Last month, my students and I went to the wild deer for 野鹿道, a dark night protection area in Jiangsu province, to observe the sky and investigate the night design of the protected area. Every year, every winter and summer, we also organize long distance observation activities. My students and I have been to go to about 30 provinces in China to observe starry sky.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So did you also invite like older generation guys have like their own?
Yeah.
Yeah.
我们下次邀请你。你现在在国内吗？因为你这个月不是要安吉去参加活动的吗？做报告。
对，还要过2周。
OK， 欢迎来无锡。
So, thank you.
And the second question， 第二个问题我就用中文回答了，就是其实我们身边的相对年长一点的人，还是在他们小的时候能够看到比较壮丽的星空的，但是呢，现在的小孩子吧，现在的年轻人可能就没有太多的机会去看到很暗天空和很多的星星，他们基本上就是在城市里面能看到像我们学校所在的地方的话，能看到3等星是比较勉强的了，大概是这样的一个情况。
So he said for the older generations, they certainly saw the beautiful dark sky when they were young, but right now for younger generations, for the children, especially like their students, in their age, they can like barely see any stars, maybe only like magnitude 3 around that level. So yeah, we really hope the younger generations can see more stars. Thank you, Xinru. And another question is for Fanny. So I think you already answered part of the question, but so what are some examples of how you have overcome cultural differences, and what advice do you have for people working across cultures? So do you have more you want to share?
Yeah, so basically, like I built like this kind of like intercultural methodology because I find it was like very appropriate tool just for connecting everyone, so everyone could find like I don't know, his place inside this methodology and put like his expertise somewhere in this big like puzzle. But yeah, in a more simply way, because I know that bringing like a full design methodology is something very heavy and not everyone want to engage in this. I would say like just to be a bit more modest with his own expertise. What I have noticed inside like the lighting design industry, but also sometimes with architects and all that stuff, it's like, to be really honest, there are a lot of egos sometimes which is involved in every way just to interact with other people. And I think it's important, even if we have like a very long expertise and experience, just to understand that the end users we have like building project for, and also the context we have working with are constantly moving. So we need to be very flexible with our mind. And even if we have done like a lot of projects in the past which were very successful, well, we still need to look at the future, the present, but also the future. And just to be very mindful that it's not because we have done something well in the past that we need to repeat exactly the same things every time. There's always a way just to improve. And that include like the concept of the project, but also sometimes like the execution. If you arrive like in a project and you believe like you can still improve, I think there are always like good opportunities to do it, and not just to stick with like a concept you have done 5 years before. Because I believe as a designer, we really need just to be proactive. Things are moving very fast. And as much as we try just this proactivity, the better in terms of like results and engagement. So yeah, just being like a bit modest, I will see, I would say, and really like trying just to listen and observe like as much as we can around us, like the site and the people. We have so much just to learn like all together. We can't like do everything by ourselves. We definitely need like the engagement of the community. And that means also like, for example, just to be a bit mindful during like the execution of the project, for example, just to be mindful that a construction worker, for example, in Vietnam doesn't have the same condition that in France or in Australia. So as a designer, we need to consider this. Like they have very difficult like condition. So we can't expect from them just to have like to produce the exact same results than someone working in France or in Australia. They don't have the same training. They don't have the same hours, the same tool. So we need to be like mindful just to get something successful. And I know that's maybe sounds like a detail, but that can completely change like your project from something successful to very like bad and just reproducing like the same errors. So yeah, basically like also intercultural intelligence mindset is covering this, but yeah, being modest, being like very flexible and always like available just to create something a bit new. So yeah, it's not comfortable as a situation, but I believe like if we don't do this effort and if we don't try to coordinate like as much as we can and not only what is written inside our contract with the client, we will be like too slow just to make like a real impact with the project. Just to protect like all what we can still protect, I would say, in terms of environment, but also like for the human well-being.
Thank you for sharing. So the next question I have is for Cesar. What developments are underway in regard to the First Nations and or indigenous people in Australia?
No, that's a really good question. There's two really big, kind of famous, I say famous in the Australian context, Indigenous astronomers, Carly Noon and I want to say Crystal Dinopoli. One of them used to work for our department at some stage, and I've tried to reach out, but they've been very busy because they've just published a book. I've tried to put feelers out to other Indigenous communities at the moment, but it's a bit challenging because Indigenous communities, I can't speak on their behalf. They have other priorities. So while I continue to reach out to them, I will let them get back to me in their own time when they're ready. But I am going to keep reaching out. And I'm aware of a couple of groups in Australia as well that have really good relationships, particularly in Melbourne, I think, with some local Indigenous communities. And I'm trying to link up through them. The organization is the IALD, and trying to figure out how to develop that relationship with using this third-party organization as an intermediary. So nothing active. It's not the answer I'd like to give, but we are trying. There's just nothing active at the moment.
Thank you. So we also have a question for Xinrong, ask about the links for the research papers. And I saw he already posted on the chat. And another question for him is how your research projects have impacted the lighting in your school and its surroundings. They have changed the lights or something like that. So 这个问题是给沈老师，你的研究项目如何影响你学校及周围环境的照明？是否改变了学校的灯光或者其他一些影响？
我用中文回答了，就是一个是那个论文的链接呢，我把英文的链接发到那个Q&A 里面了，但是中文的
Already posted the link for the English link.
对，但是中文的我不知道如何分享。
I don't know how to share the Chinese link. That's okay.
第二个问题是对我们学校的影响。那么其实，在前些年我们在学校做这个路灯的照明设计的时候，学校按照我们的最后研究报告，给学校不同的功能区重新改造了路灯的系统啊，有的功能区晚上活动的同学是比较少的，那么灯光进行了加灯罩的设计以及定时关闭的这样一个设计，还是有了一些明显的改善的。
So when the school changed their light, so they considered with his paper and his measurements and the research result, and use them as a reference to design of the lighting in the school in different function area, and also added the shields for a lot of the lights, and also have the timer to turn the lights off at a certain time. So those kind of efforts they put made the school's lighting environment improved a lot. Thank you. So
我能补充一下吗
？Sure.
但是学校周边整体在量化，所以它很大程度上抵消了我们学校内部的努力。
So the surrounding area of the school is still turning off their lights, so it's kind of canceled their effort within the school. So yeah, that is pretty sad. Thank you. So we have the last question. So for any of the speakers in the US, the American Medical Association has recommended under 3,000 K for human health. In your country, is there any medical association made any similar recommendations? Fanny, are you about to speak?
So in Vietnam, no. In France,
Okay.
yes, but not in Vietnam. Yeah, it's definitely not like at this level of research, and I don't think like the country gets like the resource for this. So that would be for the Vietnam side.
So how about France?
So in France, yes, there is like different initiative, and even I guess there's something which is a bit more popular in terms of like public hearing. And every time like they're implementing like new standards, they're definitely like launching some survey to all like the people who can provide like good advice and all that stuff. So I think like on the way of France, there's something like a bit more like advanced. It's not maybe like not internationally well known because it's all in French and we're not so good in translating everything in English, unfortunately. But some things are happening, and there are many cities also like council who want just to do some tests, and they're very like keen just to leave like some of their neighborhood just having different tests and see like what is working well, what is not working well. So that's very positive.
Thank you. Cesar, you want to share?
Yeah, no, I think again, I think it's really great that the American Medical Association has developed some position on light pollution and how it impacts humans. But there's nothing in Australia at the moment, so we do often find ourselves referring to the AMA's document, and it may not seem like it, but the government departments in Australia are quite separate, and I have been trying to find a pathway into developing some kind of guidance through our Department of Health, but nothing as of yet, I'm afraid.
Thank you. 陈老师有没有什么可以分享的？像中国有没有对色温的一些医学上的建议？你的静音了，好像。
你刚才说什么建议？
就是像美国建议对人体健康的话，会使用低于3000K 以下的色温的灯。然后像中国有没有类似的就是医学方面的组织的相关建议？
这块内容的话，我不是特别的了解，但是我知道，比方说我们在校园里面，室内的照明是有明确的规范的，因为这个室内照明的规范，国家的规范是考虑了人体的健康，尤其是眼部疲劳啊等等这样的一些方面的。
So, and also I'm not aware of any human health related considerations, but I know for at least for school for the classrooms, there are standards to talk about the lighting and how like it's like a national level standards talking about how what kind of light can be put in the classroom for the benefits of the students' health, for the students' eye to be healthy when they receive the lights. Thank you everyone. So yeah, thank you everyone for attending the wonderful session of the East and Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand session. And thanks to all of the panelists who dedicated their time and effort fighting for our beautiful starry sky. The first engagement workshop is coming up following this session after a brief break, and the theme will be astrotourism. You can find full details on our conference website, conference.darksky.org.